Hello, everyone. This is Mark Bentley. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute of Nonprofit Event Training. Thank you for joining us on our webinars that we've been doing weekly here as we've all pivoted in the wake of COVID-19. Today, we're going to be talking about planning your 2021 event and why it is crucial to do it now. Let me get my slideshow started, and then we will go ahead and jump in. All right. So thank you for those of you who have been joining us on these webinars each week, and I welcome those of you that are joining us for the first time. As I mentioned, my name is Mark Bentley. I am the Executive Director here at the Institute of NET. We exist to help nonprofit leaders specifically with their events. We believe events are one of the most important tools when it comes to development and fundraising. And we want to be able to partner alongside you to make sure you have the funds so that you can run your organization in a more effective way and as a result, a more efficient way. We do that specifically through education and teaching events. We offer classes and one-on-one consulting, and we also do event planning to come alongside and help you actually execute and plan your events as well. With that being said, of course, in the wake of COVID-19, events are a big casualty and something that we've lost a lot of, at least this spring, and who knows how long it'll continue to go. So as we've adapted during this time, we've pivoted to an online educational resource where we do these webinars, we do blogs, we still do Zoom calls for our consulting, and we're still doing event planning for events that are coming up. With that being said, that's what this webinar is about, is although we've had to cancel and pivot in the immediate, how do we look ahead to the future, and what does that entail in regards to our planning and specifically within our events? With this webinar series that we've been doing weekly, and for those of you who have joined us, as you know, we've been trying to focus on immediate needs that we feel nonprofit leaders have right now and ways we can help. We've discussed talking about online auctions. We've talked about how to be able to reschedule your events. And now, of course, talking about planning events in 2021. Starting next week, though, we're going to mix things up a little bit in our webinar series, and we're going to start a series of interviews with various business leaders, sports stars, artists, musicians, and more that I hope will encourage you as a nonprofit leader and be able to help learn from people in maybe a different field how they're handling COVID-19, as well as receiving some encouragement in this tough time with some of the principles that they've learned in their field and how they're moving forward. Our first guest is going to be NHL star defenseman, all-star for the Carolina Hurricanes, Jacob Slavin. He's going to be joining us to be able to discuss how he's preparing in the wake of the NHL being canceled. What does it look like to stay ready in case they do jump back into action, the uncertainty right now, but also things that he's learned through this process, both before, during, and hopefully projecting what he's going to learn after we all come out and life returns somewhat back to normal. So we'd love for you to join us. There is going to be a Q&A section after that webinar, just like we do after all of our webinars. So if you want to ask Jacob a question, this would be a great time to join us live. You know, if you can't join us live, we do record these webinars and place them on our website. So feel free to go and check that out there. The other final thing, kind of housekeeping before we jump in the webinar today, is we always offer a giveaway for each one of you that join us live during these webinars. Today, at the end of the webinar, we'll announce a winner who receives 3 free consulting hours, which we value at $300, as well as everyone who is watching webinars up until May 15th. We're going to do a drawing on May 15th that will win a free $15,000 event planning service. So we will come and help you plan and execute an entire event that we value at $15,000. Every time you watch a live webinar, you're going to be entered again, and that's going to be done through a random drawing again on May 15th that we will announce. So continue to watch these webinars. Each webinar you watch, your odds go up. Also with that, don't be afraid to ask questions throughout this. Here within the Zoom platform, there's a great Q&A option. You can write your question down. I may get to it right away, and it may be something that we wait till the end of this webinar where we do our questions. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into this webinar. There's a lot to cover, and I'd love to be able to answer any questions that you may have. For those of you who are watching this recorded, feel free to shoot me an email, mark@instituteofnet.com, to ask any questions. We're happy to follow up and be able to clarify any points that we may have, or be able to give you some ideas that are more specific to you and your organization. This webinar specifically, we're talking about your 2021 events and why it's important to do them now. So we kind of broke out this webinar in this two parts. The first part, we'll talk about just planning your 2021 events effectively and what is the best way to go about doing that. And then the second part is our analysis on why it's important to do it now. And hopefully it'll be some encouragement for you if you haven't started looking at your 2021 planning to go ahead and jump into action. With that, let's get started with part one. We have several thoughts that go along with this part. The first thought is have a development plan. So for those that have joined me before, you know how important a development plan is to me and the value it can have in planning great events. Events are key tools in a development plan. They are not a development plan in and of themselves. So often I see organizations that I ask them about their fundraising or what they have on the horizon. They mention, you know, we have the spring event, we have this fall event. You know, that's good to have those events, but those are just tools instead of looking at them as the plan in and of themselves. So what else are you doing when it comes to development and fundraising leading up to the events, after the events, things that don't even relate to the events? That these events then can be able to help complement and partner with your development overall, and not just based around the event. Development plans allow you to see the big picture. So they see where your holes are and you can see how events can fix them. So by having a plan laid out, you understand better what your needs are, and it takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it. You know where you are lacking, and hopefully with the events, you've done a proper analysis so you understand how they can be able to best fix and fill those holes. And then with that, analyze everything and every year, all aspects of the development plan. So don't just continue to do your event year after year because you've done it year after year. You should be able to question and well defend why you do those events and how they're valuable to your organization. So as you think through your development plan, don't just plan it around your annual spring event that you've had for 5 years or your golf tournament that you've had for 10 years, but sit down and really scrutinize and say, are these events being able to complement what we're doing in our development plan, and are they adding value? And if you can't answer that question, then maybe your resources and your time would be better spent put into something else. So really analyze everything and all of the aspects of the development plan, and then be able to be critical in how those events impact and affect your development plan overall. So that's the first thought. So as we think about our 2021 events, let's have a development plan first. We can't do the events and then the plan. Let's do the plan and then the events. The second thought is, how do you define success? So if the answer to defining success for your event is just a dollar amount, then you're already doing it wrong. And this is where I see so many nonprofits land, is when I ask them, you know, why are you doing this golf tournament, or why are you doing this banquet or this auction event? It's because we need to raise $20,000 or we need to raise $50,000. I think a financial goal is a huge aspect of the event, and I think that can be part of your definition of success. So don't get me wrong when I say that. I think, you know, one of your key goals should be a financial amount, and that is the value of events. But if you're singularly focused on just raising money, there's a lot of ways you can do this that is misleading to the actual success that your event has. So what do I mean by that? Well, events are valuable in creating transactions, but done right, they're perfect for developing the relationships. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a financial goal in your event to raise $30,000. And that's really the only goal. We're doing this event, we got to raise 30,000, and that's your only measure of success. You have 300 people go, maybe your event costs you $20,000. And then out of 300 people, an extreme example, only one person writes a check, and it's a $50,000 check. And so you clear expenses, you net your $30,000. When you look back on the event, how would you analyze it? Would you say this is a successful event? Well, one, this is obviously an extreme example where sometimes it's not as cut and dry as that. And the reality is that situation happens more than we think. And yet, instead of analyzing where the money came from or how it came from, we truly just analyze that financial and that singular dollar amount for the success of the event in and of itself. Another way to look at it is, let's say you have an event and you net your $30,000, so you grossed $50,000 to cover expenses, and all of that money came from people who gave to you let's say the last 2 years. Do you really think those people are giving to you just because of the event, or do you think they're giving to you because you developed a relationship with them in some way and they care about your cause? So if you go and you engage them financially only through the method of an event, then what you've done is you've taken the $50,000 and turned it into $30,000 because you put all that money to overhead when it wasn't necessarily needed. Now, again, these are extreme examples, and I'm not saying that you can't engage with your ongoing donors through events. But what I am saying is we need to know how to define success in a more effective way to make sure that we're not leaving money on the table and putting a lot of time and resources into an event that we could have been able to have the same success, especially if it's just a dollar amount, in a different method. Maybe those 300 people, you could have done 10 house parties with 30 of them each because they're already existing donors. The house parties cost you little to nothing, and you still could have raised the same amount of money and been more intimate in engaging them. So, think through things like that. And what is your definition of success with the event? Here at the Institute of Net, what we believe, and one of the main things that we think events are helpful for, is being able to find and mine new donors. Every year, we need to continue to grow. I mean, it's often that we talk with nonprofits where their annual budget may be $500,000. And once they hit that $500,000, they stop their fundraising. Maybe they still do a little things, but they're not really being as aggressive or engaging as they were leading up to that goal amount. And the reason that that's important to note is that if you stop your fundraising when you've hit your goal, you're essentially saying that I know I'm going to hit my goal again next year or the year after that. And if this year has taught us anything, is we don't know what tomorrow brings, or this next quarter, or this next year. And so when times are tough, like we're in right now, you want to be able to have that reserves built up that you can lean on and be able to weather the storm. So with events as well, we're not just about creating transactions. We're also about creating relationships that can help us grow our development and grow the funds we raised. If I had a choice between one check with 50,000 or 50,000 checks of $1, I would obviously choose the 50,000 checks of $1, because if one person has lost their job or decides to not give anymore, I don't feel it nearly as much as I do if that $1 or that one check at $50,000 for whatever reason can no longer give. And so building relationships and growing the development side is super crucial. And here at Institute of Net, we believe events are a key part in doing that. They're valuable in creating transactions, but done right, they're perfect for developing relationships. They're a great entry point into your funnel that you can be able to engage with afterwards. So with this in mind, how do we define success? Well, some goals that we suggest would be maybe focus on the amount of people that give. You're not so much focused on $50,000 as much as you're focused on you want 50 donors or 100 donors out of your 250 people. Another way is focus on how they give. So the focus here could be, maybe you're trying to really build up your monthly donors so you have a little bit more ability to plan and project for the future. And so a lot of the room may be existing donors, but you're not just trying to get them to give again, you're trying to change the way they give and to be able to change that annual gift into a monthly gift. And then another part or another goal would be the meetings set up after the event. So this is where I really can see a stark contrast with the way that a lot of other nonprofits we work with think and the way that we try to teach. Is that when you have an event, instead of just trying to say we need to raise 30,000, and maybe it's from 50 donors or in the monthly donors or however it is, but it's also about building the relationships and connecting with new people. So part of it may be, we're trying to get 30 new donors. So, you're specifying that even more on who's giving and trying to focus on those new donors. Or maybe what it could be is that you're just trying to set up 30 meetings. Or let's say your organization is local to the community of your event. Maybe you're a school or something like that that has a physical location. Then it could be, we want someone to come and see a tour and see firsthand the work that we do. I argue that if you gave me the choice from an event of either raising the $30,000 or being able to have 30 meetings of people who truly are excited about what we're doing and want to know more, I would choose the 30 meetings all day long, because those 30 meetings, I can engage and develop a relationship that can be worth significantly more to me in the next 3 to 5 years than that, single transactions of $30,000. So as you define success for your event, as you're looking at 2021, look at first your development plan, and based on the holes in this development plan, figure out what is it that we need to fill. Do we need more monthly donors? Do I need to find more new donors? And then from there, define success for your event and achieving that goal. Don't just focus on raising the funds that are needed. So this brings us to our third thought, which is identify your demographic. Effective results start with strategic planning. So just like we're talking about with the development plan, as you analyze and think through your event, be strategic in how you set it out. I see a lot of events when I come in to a nonprofit and, they say, well, we've got this golf tournament we've been doing for 10 years. And I ask why, why are we doing this golf tournament for 10 years? And usually it's because we had maybe a $20,000 hole in the budget, and board member Fred over here thought that, it'd be a great idea to do a golf tournament because he played in a golf tournament for Organization Z and they did really, really well, he thought. And so he saw the effectiveness and he wants to do it. And too often that's kind of the mindset that goes into deciding what type of event we do, or do we do an event. But, we're really missing a lot because that's more of a gut reaction and how we engage and try to figure out what type of event versus being able to analyze and do it the correct way from the beginning to minimize any waste, to minimize work that's unnecessary, and to maximize the efficiency with the event. So one of the most important steps in strategizing for an event is determining what type of event you're going to do. So don't just do that golf tournament because you saw someone else do it and it was effective. But the first question you really should ask yourself is identify your demographic. Who are you trying to engage with this event? Or even a better question is, who realistically is going to come to this event? Sometimes you have the luxury to cherry pick. Larger organizations have different demographic pools. Smaller and new organizations really are glued to a specific demographic that they have to lean on and engage with. But you need to identify that, and you need to know who your demographic is. So with demographic, what do I mean by that? I identify, is it primarily male? Is it primarily female? Are they young pros? Are they retirees? Are they young families or college students? What is the socioeconomic class? Geographically, are they in your city? Are they in your state? Are they in your country? Being able to identify all of those elements will be significantly impactful as you strategize and figure out what type of event that you want to do. So with that, there's two things to note as you identify your demographic. The first is to stay focused with it. I see a lot of organizations, their events, they try to do all things through one event, and they try to engage with all people. We'll talk about that here in a second. The second thing to note is try to engage both him and her. What do I mean by this? So myself, I'm a male executive director. The odds are my friends and people I'm going to connect with more are going to be more men than will be women. And so vice versa. So if we're more female executive directors, they're most likely going to connect better with women than men, because that is, their friend base and their network and what they start out with. So as a result, let's say I can get, the Smith family to donate. Is it really Mr. and Mrs. Smith that are 100% behind the work that we're doing in the cause? Or is it really maybe I just play golf with Mr. Smith and I convinced him what we're doing and he wanted to support it and he got Mrs. Smith's approval, but she's not really nearly as engaged to both me as a personal relationship, but also the organization. And so as you do events, it's okay to be demographic specific in some events. It's okay to do a golf tournament, which is definitely going to be more male specific. Or I've seen like a shooting event, like a skeet shooting event or something of that nature. I've planned an event before that was a ladies' night out event. That was a fashion show at a local boutique and a dinner and cocktail and auction. So there's going to be things like that that are going to be very gender specific, and that's okay. But have a plan even after the event on, let's say in that event, in that golf tournament, you were able to establish 10 new donors. Well, how can you meet those donor spouses after the event's done? And so what is your plan to engage them? So as you identify your demographic, know that it's okay to go after a specific person, but your goal is always trying to engage the couple. Some ways that this can be helpful. Let's say times are tough and they have to cut their giving on some of the nonprofits that they support. Then you being able to engage both him and her is going to give you a much higher chance to make the cut, so to speak, and that you're not going to be the one that's going to lose the funding than it would be if you're just his nonprofit or just her nonprofit. So again, you want to engage the couple as a whole in identifying your demographic. And then based off, your demographic, this should be able to give you more creative ideas on how do we reach them. I think a demographic that's greatly missing within the nonprofit sector is a young pro to even a college student demographic. And the reason is they don't have much money. And I understand that. And if your goal is to raise $30,000 or $50,000 in a fundraising event, it wouldn't make sense to just go after them. But if your goal instead is to create some monthly donors or to be able to engage the community in a way that creates new donors and more of a long-term strategic definition for your event versus just a transactional one, then this is a group that doesn't have as much competition for them, but can also be extremely helpful. Although they may not have money, they're willing to give their time. They're willing to give some of the resources they have, especially the skills that these college students are learning and engaging right now and want to be able to practice. Could be, graphic design work or accounting or legal work or whatever it might be. And so there's a lot that they have to offer, but yet they're rarely targeted, because when we do events, we only go after the money and we're not specific in our demographic. And so what happens is that we miss out on the people that don't fill that bucket because it's a one size fits all. And that brings us to our next thought, which is one size does not fit all. This is where I think an immediate change within the thinking within nonprofits can have a significant impact right away with their events if they can adopt this one size does not fit all mentality. Why do we try to have a one size fits all approach on events when we know that doesn't work well in other areas? Too often I see nonprofits try to do all things in one event. They're not focused with it. They're trying to recruit volunteers, attract major donors, attract monthly donors, attract small donors, new donors, old donors, etc. And as a result, you're losing your audience as a whole. So think of it this way. If you are a company and you have an email marketing campaign, let's say you have customers that come into your store on a daily basis, just your most loyal customers. If you engage and talk to them the same way as you talk to that person that maybe has never even heard of your brand, it's going to be tough to relate to both the loyal customer and the customer or potential customer that's never even heard of you. But instead, if you can segment out your email list and have a very personal message to that loyal customer that you know them by name and you know their preferences, and you can send them, a special sale that's designed even just for them, then that is going to have a much higher return than it would be if you treated them like that person you don't know. Vice versa, you can't treat that person you don't know because you don't have that luxury. So you're going to have to figure out a way to communicate to them differently. So it makes sense to segment those groups out and to engage them differently. So with that, when we do events, let's try to be strategic and how to be able to segment out people within our audience. So we're not trying to do a one size fits all and get that $50,000 donation at our event and that $20 donation, because the messaging and the communication is going to be a lot different. There's an organization here in Raleigh, North Carolina that did a great job with this. And what they came up with a few years back is that they ended up doing 2 fundraising banquets a week apart. And the reason is because the first banquet was to their high-end donors. So, probably around $5,000 and up on an annual basis. It was at a nicer venue, a nicer meal, a better speaker, and it was a more intimate event. They only had about 100 people to 150 people at this event. A week later, they had another banquet, but this was more for the people that would give anywhere from $100 up to $1,000. And it was still fun. They knew that their margins weren't going to be as good. So they actually had more people there, but it wasn't as nice of a venue. And the way that they communicated in their ask was different. And so what they did is they were able to break out those 2 segments and communicate in a more effective way. And as a result, they were able to maximize their resources and be more efficient in their fundraising. So when you do your events and as you look at 2021, remember, one size does not fit all. How can you engage different demographics and even have different definition of successes for different events? All right. And then the final thought here for the first part or the first thought is why it's crucial, or the final part of the seminar, the part 2, is why it's crucial to do your events for 2021 now. Why do we need to get on and start planning those events? And this is something that really I can't stress enough. And this is the heart behind this webinar. Is, I want to make sure that you think strategically in how you plan these events, which is why we covered what we just did in the first part. But I also want to make sure that there's a sense of urgency for nonprofit leaders as they're looking at their 2021 events, because this year is unlike any other year. And so we can't just assume and treat it like any other year. And we can't assume next year is going to be a normal year either. There's a lot of cause and effect that is happening right now that's going to be trickling down for at least 2021, and I would argue even longer. And so as we go through our plannings and our strategy for this year and 2021, we need to understand the sense of urgency. When things get changed around, there's 2 ways we respond. We either kind of get deer in the headlights and we freeze and we really don't know what to do, or we see the opportunity and we jump in it and we move forward. And now is a time where there's ample amount of opportunity for you to be able to move forward and to do your planning, your development, and your events well. But there's also a lot more consequences if we don't do it right. So why do and work on your 2021 events now? So as we're talking about, we live in a time of uncertainty like never before. So industries that are the backbone to this country have been completely ripped away in a matter of days. I mean, the event industry, I think I've seen before, is, if not the largest, one of the largest industries in the US. The travel and the event industry has just been wrecked by this. So as things get back to normal, unfortunately, it's going to be a lot slower process than it was to be able to take away this industry as it will be to add it back. And so as we slowly move back into having life as normal again within this industry, there's going to be a massive funnel and a massive bottleneck that comes about as we look at the events that we have in 2021 that everyone will be trying to do. So with that, we need to plan them now. One of the reasons we need to plan it now, early bird gets the early worm. You've got to be able to book it now to be able to get venues. I've been talking to several people within the industry right now. It's pretty remarkable, the demand already for event venues in 2021, as everyone who canceled in the spring is rescheduling for 2021, as well as even the fall. Many have canceled already in the fall. A lot, I think, are about to cancel, if I'm right, if you've been following these webinars. And you know that I predict that we won't have any unessential events, which I consider social events or fundraising events over 50 people here in 2020. I think that we really have to be able to know that all those events are going to go somewhere. The odds are they have deposits, they have fees that they're not going to get back. And so they're probably going to reschedule, and they're looking at 2021 to do this. And so with that, you want to jump on that now to be able to make sure that you can have a date available for your event. Back on March 12th is the date that I canceled all of our spring events and went ahead and rescheduled for 2021. I've been following this closely for a couple months now. I think God gave me favor in being able to see a little bit of what was to come a few days before most did. And so I was able to respond accordingly. To use it as an example, even March 12th was before March Madness had been canceled. So a lot of the PGA Tour was still playing. There's a lot that was still going on this date that we were scrambling to find new events. We had a conference this spring that we canceled. I called the sales guy on March 12th, and he was a little annoyed because he didn't think we needed to cancel events. He thought that we would still have them. I wasn't really trying to convince him because I kind of assumed that give it a few more days and he would understand a little better. But I wanted to go ahead and let him know that we wanted to book for 2021 and to get a new date now. I asked him, what other events have been canceled so far, and he said I was the first out of all their conferences, and they're completely booked for the spring. It's a very popular conference venue. That we were the first to be able to call to reschedule or even cancel our event. When we rescheduled it, there's only about 3 to 4 dates in spring of 2021. So my guesstimate is he probably had about 20 to 25 events in the spring cancel. Not all of them may have tried to reschedule, but most of them did. But he only had 4 or 5 dates to offer them. So either they had to move to a completely different venue, a different time of the year, or just be able to cancel their 2021 event. Now that was for a weekend conference, which, scheduling and availability is even more challenging on something like that. But the same effect is happening right now with smaller venues across the country. So be able to go ahead and reschedule your 2021 events and start planning those now in order to make sure that there's dates available. The other thing to keep in mind is that right now your negotiating power is stronger than it will be. So as you continue to wait, as things continue to fill up, venues right now, they just lost all of their revenue for this part of the year. They're scared about the rest of the year. So they're desperate. So the idea of having events booked in 2021 and going ahead and booking that year is very attractive to them. They're very motivated right now to book. And as a result, they also, need deposit funds and just a little bit of cash flow to help. And so for you going ahead and booking your 2021 event, you're going to have a lot more power now than if you wait even a few weeks. I'm not talking months, but even just a few weeks. I think things are going to continue to change. The other reason for doing your 2021 events now is your event in 2021 will be more important than you ever imagined. So again, 2021 is not life back to normal. It is the next, the beginning of the next phase after COVID-19. And, people are talking lasting impacts in society and restaurants. What does all this look like? Well, even for you as an organization and from a development side, you have lost one of your key touch points this year with your donors, and you really need to gain that back. So your event in 2021 is not going to look like it has if you've done this event for 5 or 10 years. but rather it's going to be a very effective event to make sure that you regain some of the momentum that you lost by not being able to engage your donors at least as well or in person like you would have by doing the event this year. If you mess around and you don't get a good date to be able to schedule for 2021, and as a result, either one, you don't have an event, or two, your date is a very undesirable date, then that could be 2 years in a row that you're not engaging with your donors in an in-person way. And that can have massive impact on their relationship with you. When it comes to donors, there's a million incredible needs and causes out there that they can give to. And the reality is they're all competing for the same pool of donors. In 2021, the same idea. Just like I'm saying, there's going to be a high amount of people booking in 2021. Well, the result of that means there's going to be a lot of events. On the plus side, people are going to be really excited to go to events. They're really excited to get out. They want community. They want to go back and hang out with their friends and join this. On the negative side, they're going to have a lot of options, though. And so how is your event going to be the one that they choose over the 4 or 5 other events that they have to say no to? What is it so special about your event? Planning it now, make sure that you plan it really well. It also makes sure that you have as many options to have the best date, to have other vendors that you need to have there, caterers, things like that, that are going to make this event attractive for your attendees. And so doing it well, doing it creatively, and doing it now is more important than it's ever been. So with that, as we look to 2021 and look at kind of the events that we're having to plan, think through strategically, what is it that we need to jump on right now that we can't plan in 6 months because it's date dependent? Some of these things you can wait on, but the venue, the caterers, if you have musical guests attend, all of those elements, now is the time to be able to pursue those. Another thing to consider and why you should plan your 2021 events now and why it's crucial to do that is, in this time of uncertainty, we don't know what tomorrow or next week or next quarter or next year even brings. And so having the event planning piece, which takes a ton of time for you and your organization to be able to put in right now, going ahead and having that piece done as much as you can will free you up as things happen later this year and as things continue to change. That most likely makes it very busy. My guess is most people right now, if they're being strategic, they have more time on their hands than ever before. A lot of things have been canceled. So even just from a social standpoint, they've got a lot more things on their hand. Not to mention, even from a work standpoint, there may be a lot of things within their programs they can no longer do right now. That I know there's a lot of pivoting going on and a lot of other work that's coming out of it. But from a net positive standpoint, people have more time now than they did before this all happened. And with that being said, use this time wisely. Don't procrastinate. Don't wait till the very last minute to be able to plan your event. But go ahead and start that process now, knowing that you've got the time to do it. Again, it is crucial that what we're doing is going to be effective in 2021. And we know that we've got to be able to do the event well. We can't half-heartedly do it. So as you start to look at the 2021, know how crucial it is to jump on your events. So with that being said, here at the Institute of Net, we exist, as I mentioned, to be able to help nonprofits be more effective. We believe nonprofits are essential to the community, and now more than ever, they are very needed in the work that they do, and that we need to make sure that donors know about them and that they have the funds needed to outsource other services so that they can be as focused as possible on their programs and do those in the most effective way. So we want to partner with you on your events to make sure that you don't miss this crucial time in development and in 2021 as you plan your events. Just like venues, though, here at the Institute of Net, we have a limited schedule. We already have several events lined up, and we're booking more as they come. And so if you're interested in letting us partner with you in these events, that could look like two things. one, we're happy just to offer strategy. We just want to help out and think through strategically, how should you do this event for 2021? This may be the 6th year of an event, but you should treat it like the first year, because things are going to be so different coming out of this. So many opportunities. You can't go back to life as normal. We must be able to adapt and know how to move forward based on this. So we would love to be able to help with that on the strategy side. And then the other side is the event planning side. As I mentioned, people have time more than ever, but there's no doubt sectors and nonprofits out there that's the opposite. Now it's busier for them than ever. I mean, the healthcare industry is a great example that right now they have less time than they ever did. There's a lot of great nonprofits that are on the front lines helping us fight this as well. And they still have to worry about development in 2021. They still have to worry about their events, but they also are doing a lot on the ground right now with the work that they do. So this could be a great way for us to come in and partner with them and help from a capacity standpoint. I always say most people don't need a full-time event planner on their team year-round, but they need 4 or 5 people on their team for a 4-month window, or a 5-month window, or whenever that event is going to take place. And so by being able to outsource it to us and our team, we can help with the graphic design, we can help with the logistics, the event planning, the negotiating, the accounting. All of that is wrapped up into this event. Ultimately, the planning and the strategy to make sure it's not just a fun and well-run event, but it's an effective event, and that you have a proper definition of success, that you know your demographic, and that you're doing an event that's going to yield the best results for the input and the time that you're going to put into it. So with that, we would love to help if there's any need out there. So feel free to shoot me an email. My email is mark@instituteofnet.com. But that concludes our webinar on how to do your events and why it's crucial to get on them now for 2021. We're grateful for each of you that have joined us through this to be able to continue to watch these webinars, and hopefully they're an impact to you. We send out surveys afterwards. We would love to hear from you and how we're doing. How can we make this better? What are some topics that you want to hear that we can help you with? And we're really excited about this new iNet encouragement series kicking off with our dear friend Jacob Slavin of the Carolina Hurricanes. So be sure next week to tune in to be able to watch us and have a Q&A with Jacob. Again, you can watch these on demand afterwards, and feel free to ask questions with that as well. With that being said, let me pull up here the, let me pull up the participants for the giveaway, and we will go ahead and announce the winner of the 3 Hours Consulting. Carolyn Curtis, you are our winner on that. So thank you so much for watching this and for being able to participate with us here in the live. I will shoot you an email afterwards with more details on those 3 hours of free consulting that we're happy to offer you. And again, each of you have been entered in to win that free $15,000 event planning service. So we will follow up more information on that when we pull the drawing May 15th. And we're thankful for, again, each of you that have joined us here live. For those of you watching this recorded later, God bless you and all the work that you're doing here on the front lines. And we pray that now that you can be effective and grow more now than ever, as tough challenges can be a time for bad things to happen, but they also can be a time to be able to learn and to grow. So we hope that we can partner with you in this journey as we all figure out how to balance COVID-19 and as we look forward to the future. So thanks for watching us, and have a great afternoon.